Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, January 26th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joined with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. Plenty to talk about. Starting with the State House, where it was just really fascinating theater, if you will, on Wednesday, as the House finally voted on right to work and passed right to work.
Right, it was a 54-44 vote, as I recall, and really it was a test of the Democrats' resolve. There's a January 31st, so next Tuesday, deadline to get things out of the get a bill out of the House that it began in. So House Bill 1001, the right to work bill had to get out of Dodge, as it were, in time for that deadline. And I think the fines that were being imposed, $1,000 a day, is pretty good leverage, if you ask me, for those Democrats that were walking on this. They had
Not
no
for
choice.
those of us who work at the Times, but now I had said, and I've made no secret, I don't think Indiana needs to become a right-to-work state. I think it's been successful in attracting business, and I think one of the things that both Governor Daniels and his Republican supporters have said is that we are luring business away from not only states adjacent to us, but from states that are farther away from us. They're coming here and they're seeing a business climate that is friendly. So, I don't know how much more friendly we have to make it. I don't know how many more concessions you have to give in order to create this.
None of the states that border Indiana are right-to-work states,
Right,
including Kentucky. So.
No.
Yes, this was definitely an inroad in the Upper Midwest.
Right, which is why I questioned the need for it to become reality in Indiana. That they aren't right-to-work states, and the other states are losing business to Indiana, even without its right-to-work status. So you have kind of an equal playing field now. None of them are right-to-work states, and yet Indiana seems to be the place people want to go to do business. There are a number of reasons for this, and I think they've already been enunciated. But
I think the real reason was to just annihilate the Democratic Party.
Well, here's the thing about that, is that I did, in case someone actually read my column from last week, I have been opposed to passage of the right-to-work bill. I just don't think we need it right now. If Indiana was failing, if Indiana was in the red, if Indiana was Illinois, you definitely need to take some kind of drastic surgical action to fix your situation. But Indiana's not in that position. Indiana's in the black, and whether you want to give Governor Daniels the credit or not, it is one of the few states in the Midwest that is doing well.
Doug, you touched on the politics, and we really saw kind of just a scorched earth approach yesterday, and especially with the final vote, was just this bizarre, chaotic scene where Bosma basically quickly closed the vote, where before some of our local legislators even had a chance to enter their vote. Right,
and it was one of those crazy situations, in the voting. But look back at what happened when Mitch Daniels took office. Day one, he gets rid of the public unions, and so this continues the process of trying to cut off support for the unions, because why would you, if you can get union support without having to pay for it?
Right.
Now that was one of the smartest things he did, is to do that day one coming into office, because the time, by the time has passed, it's moved to the back of people's minds. I mean, there are some people who will say, it's
Not
like,
the union
it affected me. No, not all the union people, but a lot of the union people did. Even with them, it moved to the back of their minds. They were working, they were making good money. They were like, well, it didn't. Everyone is in it for enlightened self-interest. It didn't hurt me.
Well, the AFL-CIO sent out a video showing Mitch Daniels talking before union members.
Right.
Back, what was it, 2006, I think?
2004.
2004.
Okay.
If I want to say.
Basically telling voters telling union members that he didn't think Indiana needed a right-to-work law.
Right. And, obviously he's, reversed himself.
Yeah.
And in fact, he said himself that, he thought long and hard about it. And last year was when he finally made up his mind.
Right.
So, if you want to take him at his word, then,
And if you think about it back then, in advance of major moves, something that he wanted badly to do, he really needed the union support on that. Obviously,
and got it.
And he got it.
It was a huge job
because it was
issue.
the promise of jobs. So that wasn't a fight. He couldn't do this fight and pass the right to work. But now, entering his final year in office, well, it's the time to put the hammer down. So, and
well,
he did.
and think what this means for the Democratic Party. Here's Pat Bauer, who's been leading the House Democrats, has a huge defeat in this. Pat Bauer has been in there. I want to say this is 42 years now. I might be wrong, but he and Chet Dobas are the only two people who have even been in the House that long. I mean, so now with this huge defeat going to
Chet Dobas being a Maryville Democrat.
right, exactly. Now with this huge defeat to Bauer, and remember this is the one that just a few years ago there was the quote about the car bomb destroying the legislative session.
Yeah.
So that antagonism between Daniels and Bauer, I think I think Bauer got car bombed.
Look at the walkout.
Right.
What was that all about?
Right to work. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's basically the scorched earth politics that basically has leveled everything else in its path. And there are things, we talk about, the right to work was done under the guise of economic development. Well, there's a lot of other things that could have been done by this legislature that would directly and more quickly impact economic development. Things like transportation, things like the Klein Avenue Bridge, things like a land-based casino, and those.
Yeah, I mean, public transportation in Northwest Indiana is hanging on by a thread. There's legislation that would basically tap casino money from the Gary Hammond East Chicago to support the buses in those communities, the fixed route systems, to just try to keep them alive for now. That bill's still in committee.
Yeah.
And
well, I'm not sure we want to go down that road right now, since we're talking about the right to work. I think that's a whole separate issue.
But this is something that got set aside because, if it's got a House Democrat's name on it, it wasn't going anywhere until this happened. So, why would you cave before you were able to make this a media circus for the Super Bowl? I think one is the $1,000 fines were adding up, and two is if you want to advance any of the other legislation that's promoted by House Democrats, you're going to have to start making concessions.
Now explain, please, for our audience who may not know, the $1,000 fine situation.
Okay, this was if you, in essence, if you go on strike, if you're a Democrat and you walk out, or if you walk out, period, and have an unexcused absence from the General Assembly, the majority party can fine you $1,000.
The Democrats were doing this to basically prevent a caucus from being called, so that the business a quorum from being called, so they couldn't conduct the business, they couldn't advance the right to work legislation. Was behind all this.
I tell you what, in last week's column, I kind of tongue-in-cheek changed my mind on my attitude towards right-to-work legislation. I said, let's pass it. Let's just. It's going to be passed, regardless of what I say, obviously, or what any other editorial columnist.
Although there were Republicans who opposed it as well.
Well, you know what?
But it was going to be passed. We knew it was going to be passed.
Right.
And so let's just pass it. Let's see where it goes, and if it doesn't go anywhere, or if it creates a negative business climate, then in 2 more years, we're going to see a dramatic shift in the General Assembly.
Indiana does become a test case, as we said before. There's no, the surrounding states don't have right to work, so you really can draw a contrast and see, as the nation starts to come out of this recession. Well, let's see, is the growth accelerated in Indiana, or is it the same, or is it lagging? It'll be interesting to see.
I got an email from someone the other day from Tennessee who said, "Oh, Tennessee is a right-to-work state, and things work so well down here." Tennessee just lost one of its major manufacturers in the Saturn plant. So I don't know. I don't know that that's.
Well, and I think that'll happen. Regardless, business decisions will have businesses come and go in every single state. But in terms of a campaign strategy from this, I think the Democrats have to go out and say, look, we tried hard to fight this. We, took huge fines ourselves, but in the end, we weren't able to defeat it. If you don't want right to work in Indiana, your only shot is to elect enough Democrats that we can overturn it.
And what they're going to have to do is make a case for it. They can't just go out and say, well, if you don't like right to work, vote for us, because that's not working.
Right.
They've got to say, if here's what right to work has meant over the last 2 years. If you don't like it, now vote for us. They're going to have to make a case. They can't just simply come out and with some partisan ideology and make a case for it.
So the unions mobilized to try to defeat right to work. I think if they're going to have any continued influence, they're going to have to mobilize to try to influence these elections.
Unions have far less influence than they did,
right,
20 years ago.